I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
CJ, always a pleasure to see you. I understand that this podcast is primarily devoted to hockey, and we are both hockey journalists. Obviously, you being more established than I am, but I had to rep for those not watching on YouTube. Soccer Canada today, they got the job done against Panama. Alphonso Davies scoring one of the most beautiful goals I've ever seen. So that's why I'm rocking the Soccer Canada black dry fit jersey. I had to shout them out. I had to point them out just to start off the podcast.
Well, the nicest part of my morning, Julian, was watching actually a shot from Panama when they were doing their commentary in real time on that goal. It was like a Steve Dangle video times 10 in terms of their reaction. Well, Alphonso Davies is taking that ball away from the defender and going in and scoring. It's awesome. I hope he gets the World Cup, obviously. And it's been cool to see them go through this qualifying campaign and, frankly, be the better team in pretty much every game they played, which is just, it's long overdue, and let's hope they keep it rolling.
I hope they keep it rolling as well, as we will on the Chris Johnston Show. A lot to get into to start off the National Hockey League season, which I don't know if you've heard. We are well underway. The Canadiens and the Leafs played against each other in their first games of the year. The Seattle Kraken have taken to the ice as well. We're waiting on the Ottawa Senators to get into action. I believe they play tonight, Thursday. So I think I'm correct on that. Calgary, I don't think they play until later this week as well. Not every single Canadian team has played yet, but we'll get our thoughts in on at least some of the ones that have. I imagine you watched Leafs Canadiens. You were at Scotiabank Arena. I saw the Instagram post. Shout out to you for putting those posts, so that way I know where you are at different times of the day. What were your impressions of that game and the Leafs and the Canadiens and just being there for a regular season game in Toronto? I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'll get to the crowd in a second, but I just want your initial takeaways from that game.
Honestly, the crowd is sort of my takeaway. It was such a weird feeling to be in a full building again. And, look, people quite rightly point out that at the best of times, Toronto is not the place you go for the loudest NHL game. That's very true. I've been to games in every single city except for Seattle now where the NHL games are played. And that's a fair point. But I honestly feel like we're still kind of in this fog, I'm guessing most people in that crowd last night haven't been in other similar crowds. I mean, maybe they've been to a concert in Toronto or Blue Jays games or what have you, where people did start to get in the building late season. But it just felt kind of like that awkwardness, almost like you're just not used to this. It's familiar, but not. And so I do expect that there'll be more atmosphere kind of going forward once people do get used to it. And, obviously some people have season tickets, they go multiple games. Maybe they'll just start to feel more normal. But I was kind of expecting more from the building than we got. I'd say it wasn't like quiet. It certainly got loud in the third period, and the Canadiens had a long 5-on-3 penalty, and crowd was getting on the referees for the calls there and stuff like that. But it was sort of a surreal, strange experience, I guess, for me to be back in a building with 18,000 plus.
I was curious about the crowd, and I'm glad we're jumping into this first because I watched from home, and I was trying to watch on Sportsnet now, and the introductions, the player introductions, I would love to get your sense of it because you were there. I thought the crowd was a little bit like hushed. And I was talking with Connor McKenna on TSN 690 this morning, actually, and he made a really good point. Like John Tavares, the team captain for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who suffers a terrible injury in the playoffs at the expense of Corey Perry. Well, not at the expense, but Corey Perry. We all know what happened there in that game one of that first round series. Did everything he can to try to fight back to get back into the lineup. His first game back from that, and like the applause for John Tavares was, I thought that was just okay. If not to be a homer or anything, but if we're at the Bell Center, like we're getting ovations, we're getting all out cheers. I'm curious what they're going to do for Jonathan Drouin when it comes time for that later this weekend. But I just thought something was just off with the way that crowd was. And I could tell from the TV, but I just was not sure if it was the case if you were in the building. I just thought they kind of took a step back. I don't know if it's because of the fact they're all wearing masks and whatever, but I thought that was just really weird to me.
That might have been a TV effect, to be honest, because Tavares to me got the loudest ovation, and it was much louder than what the other individual players got, and he sort of held a stick up for semi-extended period of time. That actually did feel like a moment a little bit there. I mean, look, it's not Taku Koivu returning from cancer, pretty legendary moment way back in the day in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
But, I actually did think he got a nice ovation. But in general, like, I'm with you. I'm right with you. Like, I don't think you misheard. I don't think that TV robbed you of some environment or some feeling that wasn't there. Like, I did expect a little bit more pop just because we've all waited so long for this. But I'm actually going to cut them a break. I really am. I believe, and there's no way to prove this. This is just my own psychology talking, but I think we've all been kind of in a fog. Like, I've even found Julian, I've gone a couple of times now to see friends or what have you at a bar or restaurant, but after not doing that for so long, like, it just feels kind of weird to be back out again. And I don't think everyone's dropped their guard after basically 18 months of rolling lockdowns and not being in the building and all that stuff. And I do think things will slowly come more to life, around these games.
I think context might matter a bit too. It's the start of a regular season, 82 games. Normally there is like a lot of like rampant excitement, but it pales in comparison to like the start of a postseason, for example, or a Stanley Cup final game. I think I can also add that as well. Like, I mean, there's a lot of games to be played in this regular season, so there's going to be a lot of times where fans can get excited. And
there's less hype around this Leafs team too, right? Like, that's part of it.
Is there?
In Toronto, for sure. I mean, that was the most muted training camp that I can recall in my career. And I think it's just because of everyone kind of knows what's at stake. Everyone knows what the team is. Like, it's not like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner have to prove how great they are. They've been top 10 scorers already multiple times in their career. They're not even 25. Like, I think that the question, of course, is we'll get it done in the playoffs and all that stuff, but that won't be answered until, May, basically. And so I do think that, at least on the ground here in the city, it was a little bit less of the normal sort of hype machine building the season up, because I think a lot of people recognize, look, they do have to go through the season. Obviously, they have to make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I didn't see anyone predicting that they won't. It'd be a massive surprise to me if this team wasn't good enough to get in. But we're not really going to learn what we need to learn until May, and it's only the start of October, mid-October here now.
Last Leafs question before I turn a bit of attention to the Montreal Canadiens. There was one quote that actually, funny enough, I kept hearing on Montreal radio yesterday. I believe it was from Jake Muzzin, where he was just basically describing how pissed off some guys were, obviously as they should, considering how the end of the season went for them. I was just curious if you had heard that quote, or your impressions of the thoughts and feelings of the Leafs going into this year, and the fact that they're likely on a mission to basically erase any embarrassment that they've endured from last season.
Yeah, I did hear the quote. Jake spoke to reporters yesterday morning before the game and gave that. What I love about Jake Muzzin, he's one of these guys, like, he's a great bellwether for the team. Like, he's always so direct, so honest, so authentic. I mean, like, you know how he feels on any given topic on any given day. And, I thought that was an interesting sentiment. A lot of the Leafs last summer after the loss to Montreal, I know they went to John Tavares' cottage, kind of in cottage country north of the city. And, it sounds like they had some pretty honest conversations there, maybe about what got in their way, if it is a mental demon type of thing, why they didn't have success. Because, I think last year in particular hurt the Leafs. I mean, they're sort of judged on like 5 years now of not winning a playoff series. But, to be truthful, last year they were the best team in the North Division in the regular season, basically from start to finish. They led division from wire to wire. They're up 3-1 with Montreal. They're in overtime in Game 5, overtime in Game 6. Those games didn't go perfectly, but the opportunity was certainly there for them to move on and finally, win a playoff series. And so I think that one did hit them a little bit more emotionally than some of the previous losses. And so, yeah, I do think it's justified or reasonable for them to be pissed off, and they have something to prove. It's just, as I say, the problem is there is this long gauntlet of a season where I think even if they were to win the President's Trophy, for example, I still don't know that they would have a ton of believers in what they're doing until they actually get it done when it counts most.
Yep. Look, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be a playoff team, but for myself and pretty much for everybody, and that includes the Leafs, it will not matter if they flame out in the first round against whichever team they end up playing. They have to win a playoff round this year. I don't know if they necessarily need to go all the way to the final in order for it to be obviously if they go to the Stanley Cup final, it's a successful season, but I don't know if it has to be, that much all or nothing. They have to at least show progress by winning a round. Because I don't think they're at the point of
that's the bar. That's one round. They got to do it. They got to finally knock that door down and at least. And there's no reason they shouldn't be able to do it. Honestly,
yeah,
I feel like I watched that Last Dance documentary during the pandemic, and they kind of highlighted how the Bulls were a team on the rise for a number of years before they broke through. I was actually a kid then. I didn't remember all that. I sort of feel like if the Leafs do go on a run, no one's going to be that surprised in a way. You're going to go yeah, of course, this team, they've got a lot of the best offensive players in the league. They've been around it. They've had 100 points multiple seasons. It feels inevitable, but until they do it, they haven't done it. And so, if they don't do it, man, that's when it gets interesting. But maybe we'll save that for future conversations because we got a long season to go over here. But if they don't get it done this year, how patient can they stay and all that stuff? I think those are valuable and real questions. It's hard to really give a firm answer on that right now.
I want to talk about Jonathan Drouin, who scored the first goal of the game for the Montreal Canadiens in that loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we've all known about the anxiety issues he's spoken about publicly. The time off he took from the Canadiens partway through last year through to the playoffs. For him to score that goal, I would imagine that means the world to him. And he's told, I'm trying to remember one of the quotes he had said to the media on Wednesday, saying that he was essentially feeling 100 times better than what he had been feeling previously. I was just curious for your thoughts on seeing Jonathan Drouin after what he's gone through hit the score sheet.
It was my favorite moment of the night, honestly. It was so cool. You could feel his emotion even way up in the press box where I was sitting. Obviously, you could see it through your screens if you're watching on television or on your tablet or what have you. I just love the message that if you take time, if you take care of your mental health, that there's good days on the other side of it. And look, it's one goal. Jonathan Drouin has scored hundreds of goals in his life, and he scored a lot of goals as an NHL player. But to see him score the first goal of the year for the Canadiens, the first goal in that game, it makes you, there's a redeeming quality to that. There's a nice feeling that goes with that. And, obviously where I'm sitting, I'm not cheering for a team. I'm not really that worried about the outcome of the game so much, but, I thought that was a really nice moment for Jonathan. And, I can't imagine anyone around the league not wanting to see that guy have a great year after what he's been through, just understanding how difficult his decision must have been. He got to such a place, he had no choice but to step away from his boyhood team in the middle of a season that went on to go to the Stanley Cup final because he had to look after himself. And so, I do love the message that, he's been open about talking about his struggles, and that, if he does have a great season, which I think is totally plausible, would make sense to me. I actually think the Canadiens are probably going to have a better year than a lot of other people seem to, even with Carey Price's status unknown and Shea Weber unlikely to play from this year. I think they low-key had a good offseason, honestly. And, I could see him being a big part of that success. And that would be, that goes a little deeper than hockey, I guess. It's not just goals and assists and points and all the stuff that we fuss over. I think that there's a sort of larger human message to be taken out of, whatever he's able to do on the other side of, dealing with some difficult stuff.
Yeah. Seeing Jonathan Drouin score that goal, again, in a similar situation as you, where I'm not watching these games to root for the Canadiens or for any team. I'm here just to, I follow the Canadiens and obviously I have my gigs with the Canadiens, whatever, just to, provide whatever analysis I'm needed to provide. But just taking any of that out of it, it was cool to see Jonathan Drouin score that goal. It was cool to see Josh Anderson, who spent time with him in the offseason, give him that pass for him to get that goal, and to see Jonathan Drouin generally be happy and pointing at Anderson for the pass. That's one of the best things you could get for any Montreal Canadiens fan, and just for this feel good story. I genuinely feel that Jonathan Drouin, when it's all said and done, he might have the feel good story of the year. And I think what he did was incredibly brave to want to just say, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling this right now. I need time away. And he took time for himself, and he's put himself back in a position where he's able to play hockey again. And if he's to be believed, he feels 100 times better than what he's ever felt, well, at least what he's felt previously. And it's just awesome to see. And this year for the Canadiens is going to be very weird, considering the fact that they won't have Carey Price, who is away for his own issues and needs to take time for himself. But the fact that Drouin was willing to do that, and Price to an extension too, I think that could be something that has a lot of reverberations going forward for NHL players and how they deal with their mental health. This is something that I think a lot of players who might have been stewing or sitting in silence, they can look at those two players and they're seeing how they're going about their mental health, and it might influence them going forward.
Right. And obviously we wish the guys didn't have to go through that stuff. Right. I mean, it's not we're not commending them for having struggles, but I think for how they're approaching their difficulties, the way that they are handling it as public facing people in the world, I can't put myself in their shoes. Honestly. I can't imagine how difficult that must be. Because it's just hard enough when whatever you're facing feels bigger than you. And then when a lot of people have to know about it and are commenting on it, people like you and I are talking about it, that must be really hard to be in that headspace. And so, I'm with you. I think there's a lot of value in what's happened. And it's kind of how I view this whole pandemic in general, Julian. Like, I hope that we all come through it a little bit better, because I know it's been hard for a lot of people in a lot of different ways, but there can be positives from this, and just having guys, discuss, I presume Carey Price at some point, when he's feeling better, when he's back around the team, we'll discuss some of what he's been through. Certainly Drouin has done that with the reporters, and then you see him live in that moment last night. Like, what a cool moment. Sports are a moment to me, right? I mean, sports are two things, I guess. I mean, on the other hand, you got Alex Ovechkin, and you're just like looking at the sheer number of his goals, right? 5th all time now after 2 goals in his season open for the Capitals. And you sort of marvel at numbers and longevity and all this stuff. You think, hey, when I was a kid, he was in the NHL, and I've got all this gray in my beard and he's in the NHL still. Like, how cool is that? But then, like, it's the moments along the way that kind of bring you out of your seat or make you feel something. And that was what Drouin's goal was to me. It just felt like a moment. And as I say, even though the Canadiens lost the game, that was kind of it was the coolest part of the night for me, just to see him do that and see his excitement on the ice.
Sports are fun, and it's fun to see stuff like that. It's also fun to see stuff like what Alexander Ovechkin did, which I'm just going to kind of peel back behind the curtain here. I am ashamed of myself for not writing that down in my rundown. We have to talk about the fact Alexander Ovechkin is now 5th all time in goals. But just before I properly segue to that, it was really cool to see Jonathan Drouin score that goal for the Montreal Canadiens, even if it did come in a losing effort. But the losing effort doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's just really good to see him back and see him looking okay. So, this just to kind of close the book on that. I want to mention Alexander Ovechkin because of the fact that we did mention him in our NHL season predictions episode, but he's already getting on to the goal scoring chase with the 2 goals he scored for the Washington Capitals the other night. Really awesome to see Alexander Ovechkin, who I think picked up an injury at some point in training camp. Well, actually during a preseason game.
He was questionable for that game.
He looks fine to me.
The amazing thing about this guy is just how long he hasn't, like, he's been able to play without a precipitous fall off in his goal rates. Like, I used to work with David Amber at Sportsnet, and literally like 3-4 years ago, David Amber was talking, like, we'd be backstage on Saturday night at hockey night, and Ovechkin would score, and he'd be talking about this Gretzky record, and he'd be doing the math. And I was like, David, you're nuts. Because as much as I admire Ovechkin, think it's great what he's doing, like, he's not going to keep scoring 40 to 50 a year in his mid-30s. But he is. Like, it's not 732 goals that he's at, Julian. Like, think about that.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of more than 14 50-goal seasons. Like, it's actually bananas that he's able to keep going. And, I mean, look, we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. He's got to be healthy to, this is a longevity record, and he's been remarkably healthy over his career. He's missed like less than 50 games his whole NHL career. But if he's healthy, I don't see him not getting this. I mean, he signed a 5-year extension in the offseason. So that's enough runway if you just start doing the math to pass Gretzky. And I think he's going to do it. And I think it's going to be really cool because any record that Wayne Gretzky's put his name on, it feels like it's almost untouchable because the 80s just happened to be such a crazy decade for the scoring rates around the league. Obviously, Wayne was by far the top of that, but Wayne has like a 92 goal season. His 215 point season, like stuff like that. As much as Connor McDavid is on another planet right now, like a crazy season for Connor is like 150 points probably at this point. And so the fact that we might be seeing one of the greatest records in the sport fall over these next couple of years with Ovechkin, I think will be celebrated. I don't know how much you remember 2005, but when him and Crosby came in the league, so much was made of like this rivalry kind of thing. Like, yeah, it always felt a little bit played up. Like it didn't feel that real to me, if you know what I'm saying. And obviously Pittsburgh and Washington played multiple playoff series. And I know that those two teams have had to kind of go through each other. And so that, like, there is a rivalry there, but I think we're at the point now where we can just celebrate these two guys. Like Crosby and Ovechkin are basically both going to retire on or close to like the Mount Rushmore of the sport. And, I think we should all take a moment to go like, look, we're down to the last couple of years of these guys. Like, I don't know how long they're going to play, but it certainly doesn't feel like forever anymore. We know we're getting the kind of last call here on them, and let's celebrate his style. Let's watch Alex do his thing. And, I think he's going to do it. I'd be surprised now, honestly, if he didn't get a goal record rather than if he did. Like that's how much it's turned in 4 years. And, shout out to my man, David Amber, because he was in on the ground floor of this one.
Shout out to the homie David Amber. I haven't met him yet, but we've had conversations. He's the best. He's a Syracuse alum as well. So we've had conversations about Syracuse, him and I. Also, to quote another one of our good friends, James Murrell, I say he does it. I say Alexander Ovechkin, he's going to do this. Like, and I think I've said this on Sportsnet as well. If I'm Ted Leonsis, the owner of the Washington Capitals, every night I go to the locker room, I look at every player. I'm like, you do everything that you can to ensure that man, Alexander Ovechkin, breaks that goal record. And I get it. You know what? He's not going to have a 92 goal season like what Wayne Gretzky had. But the goaltending in those eras, let's be real here. The goaltending and everything else in those eras, very different than what Alexander Ovechkin had to play through now. That's not to diminish what Wayne Gretzky's had, which 92 goals in any league is like amazing. But like Alexander Ovechkin has had to deal with, an increased level of competition, more teams, obviously. He's some of the coaches he's had to deal with over this last few years in terms of how they tried to change some of his playing styles has also contributed to this too. Could you imagine how many more goals he would have if he didn't have Adam Oates as his head coach? If he didn't have Dale Hunter as his head coach? Come on. Come on.
Thing, if you're going to play 15, 16, 17 years in a league, you're going to go through some shit. Like that's just a fact, yes. Right? I mean, like you're going to have off seasons, you're going to have injuries, you're going to have coaching issues or teammate issues. Like no one has just a seamless path through life. I mean, you gotta push through, some difficult moments. And so, he's done that. I mean, he's also contended with, a couple lockouts that cost the league some games. He would have entered the year, I believe, in 04. The 04-05 lockout canceled the entire season, would have been his rookie year, most likely. So he would have another full season anyway. Plus they lost half a season in 12-13. And then we had a pandemic, which cost some games and a 56 game season last year. He could have played another 200 games by this point, but he's doing just well, even without that fact. And, it's going to be, I do think it's going to be like a ball rolling downhill. And with the new US TV partners, like this is something they're going to get behind. It's really easy to understand, even if you don't understand the sports nuances. It's like a home run chase. You just like seeing a guy hit the ball out of the park. Like you like seeing someone fill the net, and Ovechkin continues to do that. And it's quite a spectacle.
We'll get to those US TV partners in a second here. I just wanted to call back to 2005 and those early days of Crosby versus Ovechkin. As a kid who didn't know any better, I see those two players being pitted against each other. I'm like, wow, like this is awesome. But I also kind of feel like I had to pick between the two. Like if you're, for anyone who watches the show and remembers the Twilight movies, there's Team Edward and Team Jacob. I think that those are two names of two characters. I think the vampire and the werewolf. Like there was for me, there was Team Ovechkin or Team Crosby. And like, as a Canadian, obviously, like you're like Sidney Crosby's like an amazing player. He's able to do all these amazing things. Like Sidney Crosby has as many goals, like from the seat of his pants or finding a way to fall to the seat of his pants as some NHL players have had like collectively in their careers. Whereas Alexander Ovechkin, especially early on in his career, the excitement, the flair, the fun, that drew me more to him. Not that I didn't like Sidney Crosby, but Alexander Ovechkin, the goal scoring, the jumping into the glass, the hot stick, the goal of the century, as far as I'm concerned, against the Arizona Coyotes. Who was head coach at the time? Wayne freaking Gretzky. He's looking up at the Jumbotron like, God damn, he did that. Alexander Ovechkin,
do you know what is so cool? Austin Matthews was in the building that day as a little kid.
Really?
And he said that was like a defining moment in his life. He was in the building in Arizona when that happened. Like you think of like the little bit of magic that's in the universe. Like that to me is like a little sprinkle of magic, because, you know, the fact that Austin Matthews came from where he came from and is the player that he is like, he's like the equivalent of an alien, right? Like no one plays hockey by accident. Like that's the biggest challenge of our sport is, you know, someone has to put blades on your feet and you know, find ice and allow you to learn how to navigate that. And then obviously, you know, build a skill set on that. You know, it's not as simple as, you know, playing down at the park on you know, basketball hoop or with soccer ball, you know, where I think that can just happen more naturally for kids. And, you know, Austin Matthews was in the building. Emily Kaplan, shout out to her. She wrote a great piece on Austin on ESPN, and he talked about that in her story. But, you know, I'd heard that story before as well, just being around Austin a little bit here in Toronto. And you know, that's the magic of what this whole thing is, man. Like that's what we're hoping for. Like people used to hate on Gary Bettman for taking teams to untraditional places. Well, guess what? When you have teams at untraditional places, you open up the possibility that athletes that would have done something else come to your sport. You know, like Austin would probably be a baseball player, honestly, if you know, if he didn't fall in love with the Coyotes, and it was only because the Coyotes were playing in Arizona and he was, you know, growing up in Scottsdale. So, you know, I love that the NHL wants to take games to Mexico. You know, I think as much as we can expose the sport to the world, we should, because you want the best athletes coming into your sport and doing great things. And I think that's what Crosby and Ovechkin did. They reached an audience beyond just the traditional folks that were going to watch games anyway. And, you know, they've helped spawn this next generation. And, you know, hopefully now Matthews and McDavid and McKinnon and all the great players in the league now can do that for future generations.
I'm trying to remember, you mentioned the Mexico thing. Is that out there anywhere? I don't remember coming across that, or maybe I just missed that. Or is the NHL close to that at all? Like, that seems really interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like they're making plans to like take a preseason game there at some point. You know, I think that they're just recognizing it's a market they should get into. I mean, look, they have teams in places with a lot where a lot of Mexicans live. I'm sure the Coyotes wouldn't mind going there. You know, the teams in Texas, Dallas Stars wouldn't probably mind playing there at some point.
California.
So, yeah, exactly. Like I think that, you know, they're going to start small, but, you know, the NFL's had games there. You know, other leagues are getting into what's a big country, and I just think it's a natural extension of the league. And so it's not like they're going to put a franchise there anytime soon or anything like that. But I do think you'll see at least some neutral site games there and trying to get into that market a little bit. And, you know, you probably want to use a guy like Austin Matthews. Like his mom is from Mexico. You know, he speaks some Spanish, and he certainly grew up appreciating, you know, what that country's all about and the way of life there. And so, you know, why wouldn't you, if one of your most marketable stars has a natural connection, it's not, you know, it's not a forced thing. Like, why wouldn't you try to open up that market? And again, you just need to find one player from there and it's worth it. I would argue. And so, you know, let's celebrate the places we can take this game, not try to keep it so provincial or so Canadian or so whatever. I think that we should want to see it played more places around the world and, you know, get more special athletes coming to our sport.
Well said, CJ. I want to get to those U.S. TV partners, ESPN and TNT, as they've kicked off their broadcasts of the NHL season. Sportsnet at least was able to air games, I think, on Tuesday night from the ESPN broadcast for the Pittsburgh-Tampa Bay game and Seattle and Vegas. And I guess through this conversation, we could also get into our thoughts on the Seattle Kraken as well. And TNT, they have their own broadcast as well. They got Charles Barkley in on their first night, and Wayne Gretzky's there too. I don't know if you saw the video of Charles Barkley trying to put on the pads, like Wayne Gretzky shooting on him. What were your impressions of both of those outlets, you know, doing their thing with the National Hockey League?
Well, I love that they're experimenting. You know, like I noticed in the Tampa game on opening night on Tuesday that like they're using some different cameras we haven't really seen before to show the crowd shots. You know, they had Emily Kaplan between the benches, you know, and typically where we'd see a former player, the color commentator, you know, in that spot. historically, and they have a sideline reporter, essentially, and Emily, who does an awesome job and is a good friend of mine. I was pumped to see that. I mean, just because I'm glad they're recognizing the talent they have. I'm glad that they're promoting the talent they have. And, I don't mind seeing Charles Barkley and Wayne Gretzky have some fun on the intermission. I didn't see that intermission because I was at the Leafs Habs game, but I saw some of the stuff on social media. Like, I do think sometimes we have to break the mold and embrace the fun of the sport.
We're in October, football season well underway. No better time than now, if you haven't already started in September, to get yourself some skin in the game than by using BetMGM. They are the exclusive betting partner of The Athletic. And if you're a fan of The Athletic like I am, you can bet $10 to win $150 plus a free 3-month subscription or extension to your subscription to The Athletic when you bet with BetMGM using our promo code. Just sign up at betmgm.com and use the promo code TheAthleticPod at checkout to take advantage of this special offer from the king of sportsbooks. That's The Athletic Pod. That's the promo code. You bet $10 and you could win $150 and also a 3 months free subscription or extension to your subscription for The Athletic. BetMGM.com and use the promo code TheAthleticPod. New customer offer. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions.
21 years of age or older to wager. Arizona, Colorado, Washington, D.C., Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Washington, D.C., Nevada, Wyoming, and Virginia, 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-GAMBLER in Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Call or text the Tennessee Red Line 800-889-9789 in Tennessee or call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana.
Powered by OfficePools.com, all of the Athletic hockey shows are giving you a chance to participate in their pools. And if you do that, it looks as if you can get yourself some really cool prizes. OfficePools.com, if you haven't already heard of them, they were launched in 1995 as the first website that allowed people to manage a hockey pool online instead of waiting for the scores to be posted on the bulletin board or the company fridge. Remember those times when you went to an office and you had to go to a bulletin board to figure out what's going on? Those are really, really weird days. But now we're at the age now where we have Slack. I don't know. Anyway, so here's some of the prizes you could win if you join the Athletic Hockey Pool powered by OfficePools.com. You are automatically entered to win a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, which one of your choice if you get the opportunity to win. First, second, and third place, you could also get some signed jerseys from players like Sidney Crosby, John Tavares as well. We'll get exact details on some of the other jerseys as well coming soon. But yeah, a lot of really cool jerseys you can win. Go to officepools.com, sign up, and join the Athletic Hockey Pool and make your picks for your chance to win some fantastic prizes. Well, you've been waiting on these ads. We finally have Manscaped ads on the Chris Johnston Show. Will we ever get Chris to do one of these? Probably not, but that's okay. I think I've got an idea of how to do these ads. I've heard so many of them on the Steve Dangle podcast. One day I was even listening to Adam go about this, and I'm like, why is Adam talking about balls so much? I don't need to hear it that much. But I had heard about Manscaped from so many other places. I'm like, you know what? Damn it. I'm just going to order from Manscaped and see what it's like. And I'll tell you what, the package they gave me, pretty good. Pretty good. That package includes the Lawnmower 4.0, and it's really good. Dudes, it's really good. Manscaped, they're the global leaders in male grooming, and they're trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. Do not get chirped this year for having a Jumbo Joe bush below the waist. And I'm just going to peel back the curtain here. That line actually says that, a Jumbo Joe bush below the waist. Join the Manscaped movement for all your hairiest grooming needs and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code CHRIS21 at manscaped.com. And get yourself a Lawnmower 4.0. The 3.0 is pretty good. The 4.0, that's where it's at. I want to shout out John Butchergross, who did the call of the Seattle-Vegas game. I have to admit, I was trying to listen in. I was like, is that Brendan Burke? No. Is that John Forsland? No. John Butchergross. Like the ESPN anchor John Butchergross. He was amazing. I thought he was incredible calling that game. And we can get into the Seattle stuff as well. But like, I thought his excitement, his passion matched the level that was needed for that game, considering that, you know, Vegas did have that lead, but Seattle found a way to come all the way back. And he was just incredible. So I think he deserves a shout out for the way that he was able to call that game.
You know, I gotta say, like, if you're out there listening to this, but if you're thinking of an NHL road trip, like Vegas has got to be near the top of your list. And it's not because, you know, look, there's clubs and gambling and all the stuff that Vegas is known for, but just as a building experience, like just the straight up game there is unreal. And, you know, that probably helped John in that moment, because obviously ESPN's excited for getting the rights back. They got these two newer-ish teams, the first game crack in history, and then that building just pops. It's awesome.
Man, I got to get myself out there. Actually, you know what? Fun fact. I have never, for as long as I've been in hockey media, I guess, I've never been to a other arena outside of the Bell Center as a media member. Actually, I think at all. I think Bell Center is the only NHL arena I've been to.
Wow.
I know. Yeah. It's the only NHL arena I've been to watch a game. Like I went to Madison Square Garden, but it was to watch the Mavericks and the Knicks. Haven't been to Canadian Tire Center, not Scotiabank Arena.
Wow.
I know. Yeah. I hope
that's going to change, bud. Your career is on the rise. That's going to change. But it was a big moment for me when I got to every building, like when I was able to say I've been to every building. The last one I went to, well, I mean, now we have some new buildings, right? I haven't been to Seattle yet, and the Islanders are opening a new building in November. So there's still a couple more, I guess. There'll forever be more to check off the list. But the last building I went to actually was in Uniondale, the Coliseum.
Oh, cool.
Was just for whatever reason I'd been everywhere else in my career, and I actually went basically straight from the Olympics in Sochi in 2014 to a Leafs Islanders game, and that was the last building at that time that I hadn't been in. And you know, it's cool. Like it getting around the league, I think, is important because you start to understand the culture of different fan bases, like what just even an appreciation that life is like, you know, it intuitively that life is different if you play for the Kings or you play for the Canadians, but like to sort of experience the environment around the arena, like I think you get kind of a deeper understanding of how vast and, you know, the experience is really night and day in some markets. You know, like Philip Deneau, I guess, went the opposite way in that exchange. Like he's going to live a much different life in Manhattan Beach, you know, where people will know who he is. Like the Kings do have a good following there, but like I don't think anyone will much bother him too much. You know, versus, you know, his life as a French Canadian, you know, player on the Montreal Canadiens. So, you know, it's cool going to those places. It's cool seeing the sort of different takes on hockey. You know, Nashville, they got these chants, like it's almost like a college football game or something.
Or a soccer match, actually. I think about that too. Yeah.
Like Nashville is one of the great fun places to go, but it's not necessarily intimidating, like for the other team, say. Like it's almost just like fun for fun's sake. You know, Chicago, when they're going, like that building just like shakes on the foundation. I love going to Madison Square Garden. Like it always feels like an event, even if you're there on a Tuesday in November and it's game 12, you know, like it's not necessarily, there's not stakes attached to the game, but you just feel like you're on this sort of majestic stage. The Bell Center for me, it's like going to the Vatican if you're Catholic. Like to me, like that's for me, that's like the church of hockey. You know, not to make this about religion, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's like something spiritual there. You know, Vegas is just bananas. Like you can't even think straight in there. The Shark Tank, like that place gets loud. I think the Shark Tank might be the most intimidating building for opponents to play in, believe it or not, when the Sharks are good. Like I don't know if they still have that environment going right now, because obviously they're kind of, you know, they're in a different spot. But like I've heard that like the first 10 minutes playing there, I've heard multiple players say like it's just, you feel like the fans are on top of you. You know, there's so much great that goes on in the league. And so I'm excited for you to get around and get a different feeling for kind of all these spots and see these cities. I mean, you know, it's there's not many bad ones, put it that way. Over my years going on road trips, there wasn't too many days. It's like, oh crap, I got to go to this place. I mean, it you know, even some of the places that maybe have a bad rap, in my opinion, aren't that bad. Like Detroit's got a whole lot of cool stuff going on right now. For example, like I know people talk some smack about Detroit, but like it's got a really neat environment happening downtown. You know, the Red Wings, you know, Joe Louis was a cool spot. I like the new rink, Little Caesars. So, you know, I've been lucky, man. I've got to go to all these places on someone else's dime. So, you know, I'm stealing the money at this point.
Okay, I have a question because you just made me think of something else that I will share at some point. How old were you when you got to go to your first NHL game? Like, regardless of media or anything, how old were you when you got to go to your first NHL game?
I was like 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old. My dad managed to score tickets to a Leafs Penguins game. And I think I went to 3 NHL games before I was a journalist. Like it was,
What's the 3?
As a kid, basically, before I was getting paid to go to the game. So, that's part of what fueled the dream, man, for me. Cause it was a real treat to go when I went. Like I can remember the games. I can tell you who scored. I can tell you who was in net. And these games happened a long freaking time ago, man. I'm getting older. And so that's what partially made it so special for me. And I got to cover my first game in May 2002. It was a Leafs Senators playoff game, game 5 of their second round series. It was the game where Daniel Alfredsson hit Darcy Tucker from behind and then scored the winning goal right after. It's funny because I once had a drink with Daniel Alfredsson in Vegas during the NHL awards. He knew I was with, he knew who I was, but he knew someone I was with really, really well. And he saw us and he came over and had a drink with us. And he was saying that was one of the best, that was one of the highlights of his career, that goal, just because the Leafs Senators rivalry back in that day, it was legit, right? Those teams played 4 years in a row in the playoffs. They were 2 of the best teams in the league. I know neither of them went and won a Stanley Cup with those era players, but they were in the mix, and so they had to go through each other. And, just everything that went into that, Alfredsson said that was one of the highlights of his career. And anyway, that was the first night I got to go as a reporter. I'm just in story time here, Julian, now, but
that's fine. That's fine.
What a career it's been,
love
man.
That.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
People love that. Also, I'll say, even as a Montrealer, watching from a distance, those Sens Leafs games, those are some of the most fun games to watch. That was just so cool, especially in the playoffs as well. Seeing those 2 teams go at it, Sens and Leafs, that rivalry, I think it's criminally underrated considering some of the rivalries we've seen over the last few years in the National Hockey League. So,
neither team's been good at the same time since, right? That was the early 2000s. Once you got to the lockout 04-05, the Sens were really good on the other side of that lockout, but the Leafs went in the wrong direction. And so, I think just the way this division sets up, at some point they'll probably play again in the playoffs. And that'll be something. It'll be cool, I think, because, obviously geographic rivalry spurs it. And, it's easy to hate Toronto if you're in another part of the country. I get it. It's kind of it's a thing. And so I look forward to seeing that happen at some point in the future. I also want to see a Leafs Habs series with fans in it. That was on my bucket list. I have a short career bucket list at this point, but one of them was covering a Leafs Habs series. And obviously I got to do that last year, but it didn't feel totally real. And so I really hope we get that at some point with fans and everything that comes with it, a more normal kind of playoff environment.
CJ, the one other storyline I wanted to get to, you mentioned the Ottawa Senators in your latest article in the Toronto Star with regards to them basically getting out of the rebuild stage and hopefully ascending to a point where they can start competing for the playoffs. We've mentioned Brady Tkachuk on almost every episode that we've done. And I don't know how, but we managed to. We're not late on the news. There's some breaking news as we were recording. Brady Tkachuk has signed finally with the Ottawa Senators. I know you were able to figure out some of that news too. What are some of the details that we know about Brady Tkachuk right now?
Well, with the genius of Jesse Blake, what our audience won't know is that we actually taped a version of this chat in which this contract wasn't signed. But you're not going to hear that one. That's gonna be the pilot episode that doesn't exist yet. That's just going to be in storage, because literally we finished recording for those out there, and then I looked at my phone. I was like, oh shit, Julian, he signed while we were recording a thing about him not signing.
He did. You're absolutely right. He did.
But that's great news. Look, it's great news for Brady. It's great news for Ottawa. I don't want to see any player go through a long extended break. Look, it's going to be 7 to 10 days probably before he's up to full speed and playing with the team. So that's certainly not going to be ready for their opener on Thursday night. But, for him to sign a 7-year deal there, I think is an absolute home run for the Senators. He carries an $8.2 million cap hit, which might be a little bit rich for his production based on the comparables. But I think you have to sometimes allow for the individual circumstances of a contract negotiation more than just, how many goals he scored and what other players that, have similar contracts have scored. And, let's look at the Senators team now. They have Thomas Chabot signed for 7 more years. He had an 8-year extension. They got Drake Batherson done on a 6-year deal in the offseason. all these players since their rebuild started in 2017 that they started stockpiling with high picks. And Brady really was the first one. He was a 4th overall pick in 2018. It was kind of the first year where they bottomed out after going to the Eastern Conference Final, are now signed long-term and committed to that organization. And so, it's I think it's a big win for Ottawa to get his name on a contract long-term. It gives them a window of contention now, right? Like they're saying the rebuild's over. Well, the good news is they got 7 years of Brady Tkachuk now. That's the window to build up and try to win. And look he might sign another contract beyond that. We don't know what the future holds, of course, but I think it starts to establish a time frame here where they should be a competitive team and be taking steps in a positive direction. And so, this is a good day for the Ottawa Senators. It's a great day for Brady Tkachuk and his family. And now we get to see. I'm a little skeptical, if I'm being honest, that the rebuild's over. I think they should absolutely set the expectation there. I think that's wise. You have to announce to your team, as Pierre Dorian did in September, like it's not acceptable to lose now. We're not in the game of trying to get a high draft pick. But I think it's going to be a big hill for them to climb this year, just because they have been kind of wandering around in the desert for 4 seasons now.
What I want to know, actually not even what I want to know yet, is okay, I have 2 thoughts here. So first, do you think the deal that's out there for Brady, do you think that's a little bit rich? Do you think that's just right? The type of player that he is, like, is that like a good deal? And I have my other thoughts on the whole rebuild thing, but like I'm looking at $8.214 million for the next 7 years. I mean, Nick Suzuki just signed for a little less than that. I don't think it's fair to necessarily make those 2 comparables, but those 2 players did sign contracts this week. Essentially, is Brady Tkachuk getting a little bit too much? Is it a little too less? Or is this just right?
Well, let's keep in mind, he's taking some risk with a 7-year deal too, because, we live in a flat cap world right now, but by 2025, give or take, it wouldn't be inconceivable to see the cap jump by 10 million. Once essentially the money that the players owe the owners is paid back from the pandemic, I think, the overall league revenues will be at a point where we see a big jump in the salary cap. And so Brady Tkachuk has sold some of those years. And much like any player that's making a long-term decision right now, you don't know what that's going to look like. And so we might say today, yeah, he looks a little bit overpaid based on some of the other players in the market. He's getting more than Svechnikov, and he's getting more than Nick Suzuki on their long-term deals in terms of the AAV, and probably hasn't, necessarily produced at a level that those players have. But, he's given up something here too. And so I think that's where the beauty of the negotiation was. I heard that the Sens kind of were stuck on $7.5 million on a long-term deal. He was looking for 8.5. They grinded as this week went along, and obviously they got to 8.2, give or take. So the Senators did come up obviously on where their offer was. And that's how these things are supposed to work. I did say all along, as Julian, on our show, that the start of the season would be a deadline, right? Like he's missing actual checks as of each day that passes once the regular season begins. And obviously he's still going to miss some games, but he starts missing games. He's missing things he can't get back, essentially. And for them, they're missing him. This is a big season in Ottawa, and make no mistake about that. Even if I don't see them as a playoff team, I think that this is a season for them to energize their marketplace, to try to be in that playoff hunt, to get their fans excited again, obviously to get the revenue flowing and get fans back in the building. And so, the fact that they've mitigated how long this absence will be is a good thing. Because if it got beyond opening day with no contract, like honestly, it could have went to December 1st. Like once you get beyond that kind of deadline, because it is a real deadline, like there's almost no reason for either side to cave between mid-October and December 1st when there's an actual signing deadline for him to play in the league this season. And so, credit to everyone for getting through that and not having this drag on any longer.
Yeah, for sure. Because this is a team that I think, even if they might not be ready to be a playoff team just yet, they're entering a division where they can look at 2 teams and say, hey, we were able to get some pretty big wins off you last year, and we're not afraid of you going into this season. I'm talking about Montreal and Toronto specifically. I don't know how that attitude will carry over in games against Boston and Florida and Tampa Bay, but I know at least 2 of those teams, 2 teams we expect to either be in the playoffs or at least be in the conversation to try to get a wild card spot. The Ottawa Senators can at least go into those games and say, hey, we're able to hang with these teams. And I think with the culture that they have going forward and the talent that they have, it will serve them well, not just for this season, but for years going forward. But having Brady Tkachuk in the fold will do wonders for this team. Obviously, I'm still a bit curious about the way the numbers will stack up, but you make a really good point that this contract could eventually not necessarily look like an overpay in the next few years. But Brady Tkachuk, I'll definitely say this. He is an essential part of this Ottawa Senators team. He helps them go, and they really needed him in the lineup.
They did. And, what good news to start the season. Like, I'm feeling the good vibes this week, Julian. Like, it's been a fun first week of games. And, I'm excited to see the Senators like create some buzz in their market. Like they earned praise last year, I don't think that we can overstate the fact that they opened some eyes in Canada, where they played the North Division last season, second half. They only won 2 of their first 15 games. And they didn't fold a tent. Like DJ Smith, to me, was the perfect choice with the benefit of hindsight, looking what he's been able to get out of that team. I think they've punched above their weight class in terms of their performance. And, I do think that they're an exciting young team. I just don't know if they're ready to really get into the mix to the top 3 or 4 in the division. But, I do know they have a better chance with Brady Tkachuk in the lineup than if he was, still in Ann Arbor skating with the U.S. national program, where he weathered the storm, so to speak, well during this long contract negotiation.
Second week in a row, the CJ Show happens to be recording when news breaks. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you get what I mean. But we were able to get on top of the Brady Tkachuk news, and that's pretty much everything we wanted to talk about on this week's edition. Now, who delivers the bad news to Adam Wild that our podcast is above 30 minutes again?
We stuck the landing again. Another perfect 30-minute episode.
We did it again. Yes. Adam did. It was his idea to kind of put this podcast together, and he essentially wanted for us to be 30 minutes. And we wanted to do that. It's just, there's just so much to talk about, like seriously.
Do you think eventually Adam is just going to stop our episode at 30 minutes and not even, just that's as far as you go and that's all you get?
Here's my thing. If you were to do that on an episode where you were about to deliver some really juicy Toronto Maple Leafs information, Adam would not hear the end of it, and there would be blood. Maybe not blood, but there would be hell to pay on his hands. So you know what?
The Discord would be lit if that happened.
Oh man, the Discord would be all over Adam Wild, who, shout out, big love to the homie. We're all making jokes, but yeah, we're not any closer to these 30-minute episodes. We'll take care of some housekeeping before we officially sign.
We'll be better next week, bud. You gotta. We're just taking it one game at a time, one pod at a time. Monday we're gonna be better. I feel it.
I hope. We'll try our best to get closer. Housekeeping. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We're on Amazon Music now. Someone actually asked us this week if we were going to be on Amazon, and Jesse Blake, the production king that he is, found a way to make that happen. So you have no excuses. It's on just about every other podcast platform you can imagine. You should be able to subscribe and download the Chris Johnston Show. And of course on YouTube, the SDPN YouTube channel. It's also a good place where you can watch our videos, clips of our shows from past episodes as well. Be sure to check that out. Check out Chris Johnston's work in the Toronto Star as well. I mentioned the article he has on the Ottawa Senators. Go check that out over there. And we'll be back on Monday with more news to talk about. And you could already send questions to us either at CJ's Twitter, Reporter Chris, or at my Twitter handle, JKA McKenzie, or on Discord. Go to our Discord, sdpn.ca. There's a big button for Discord. You can log in that way. I think I covered everything, CJ, unless there was anything else you want me to plug, or if there's any other thing that we need to mention here. I said a mouthful. I have to drink some water. Jeez.
You did great. I think you covered all the bases there. So yeah, thanks for your support. Honestly, we're loving the vibe we're getting from the audience, and have a great weekend, brother. I hope everyone's safe out there. Enjoy the games, and we'll be back at you on Monday.
See you all on Monday. For CJ, I'm Julian saying so long and peace.
Peace, bro.
The Chris Johnston Show. Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JKA McKenzie.